Hey everyone, welcome back to the All Music Matters Not podcast. I'm your host, Brian, and today I'm very honored to actually host a very special guest, Gabe Stillman. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing very well, man. It's good to be here with you, Brian. Thanks for having me on your show.
No worries. And here's a funny story. At Hardwood Acres, a couple weeks back, you were actually opening up for Billy Price, and actually that particular day, it actually stormed a little bit before, maybe more of a hard rain. And originally, me and my dad, we were actually not thinking of coming until maybe a little bit later. Wasn't sure if it was going to be around Billy Price, but I was very glad we did because we actually saw you, and I happened to run across actually a good friend of mine that I also had interviewed on my show, Tate Berkey. So,
Yes, sir.
so like I said, how'd you two meet?
Well, I've known Tate. Tate was a student at the Uptown Music Collective while I was on my way out of there as a senior in high school. So I here in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, where I'm from, we have a nonprofit school of music called the Uptown Music Collective. And Tate is a very gifted individual who I knew right away when I saw him. I think it was right around the time that I was graduating high school, or maybe a few months after I was graduating high school, that I first took notice of him. He must have been about 11 or 12 years old, around the same time or around the same age that I was when I started taking lessons at the collective. And I just noticed right away that this kid had such a good feel for music and the drums and such a passion for it. And, really nice kid, beautiful, spirit. And I had been, what was I at the time? Probably around 15 or 16 when I first saw him and saw that passion in him. I graduated high school here in Williamsport, went away, went to Berklee College of Music, came back, and, I see this kid who I had, seen all of this passion and drive for music in, and he was coming up on his maybe junior year of high school, senior year of high school. And he had, as many, people with passion do, if you pursue your passion, the more time and the more energy you invest in it, the better you get. Well, this kid had skyrocketed. And I started teaching at the collective shortly after I had moved back to Williamsport from Boston. And I knew that Tate had a very, very bright future, and he has since gone to Temple, which I'm sure he talked about on your show, and has now graduated from there in their jazz program, which is very prestigious. And him and I have played gigs off and on together throughout the years, and he's a really, really good guy and very, very talented musician. And I'm just grateful that he enjoys playing music with me as much as I enjoy playing music with him. It's always fun to have Tate on a gig, and just a very special relationship. When you meet somebody when they're young, and you see their growth as people, as musicians. It's one of the things that I love so much about teaching music, is that there's it's very rewarding as an educator, as a teacher, to see that light bulb moment go off in someone's head. I remember directing Tate. He was part of a performance blues workshop, which I think was the second or third performance blues workshop that the Uptown Music Collective had. And I had been a part of one of those in the past. and was asked back to come and kind of give some advice and some, just kind of, whatever tutelage I could give to these youngsters. And, Tate is one of those guys that he needed no tutelage. He didn't need, help from me. He had all of the musicianship and wherewithal already within him and talent to just execute exactly what was appropriate in the moment. And so for me now being a professional and him now being he's 22, 23, I consider I consider that a grown man, and a professional, and he's executing it masterfully. And it's such a pleasure to get to make music with him.
Yeah, when I had interviewed him, he had just graduated from college, actually, and
yeah,
I think he said he had to move out of his apartment, and then he couldn't use his studio anymore. So I think he said he wanted to move back in with the parents, but regardless, he'll be able to see his whole interview, not this upcoming week, but next weekend, or next week, I should say. I separated the two parts for Monday and Wednesday, so everybody make sure you go check that out right there. But funny enough, after it stormed, actually, I was mowing the lawn that day. And so needless to say, I got soaked to the bone just trying to mow the lawn. And I think you had just started, and you're probably a couple songs in when I'd be like, let's just go. And then if it rains, whatever happens, because we had seen Billy Price a good number of times. So I guess, how did you and Billy Price, form this little show together? Did you have to work some things out?
No, I've known Billy since I was about, I'd say 19, 20, 21, somewhere around there. My memory gets a little foggy at around 21. I hope that there's some listeners out there who understand that. But Billy and I have known each other for quite a while. I just turned 28. And I met Billy through my friends Mark Wenner and the Nighthawks, who Billy has had a very long-standing professional and maybe at times unprofessional relationship with. And they're just beautiful guys. They've always been very supportive. Billy's always been incredibly supportive of me and my career and what I've had going on. I respect Billy a lot as a songwriter and performer. It was never anything that we developed. I think that we just serendipitously both agreed that, this is a good fit. We can do shows together. Actually, Billy's first show after the pandemic ended was here in Williamsport at the Community Arts Center. Now, and I don't mean to say that the pandemic ended because it hasn't ended, but once the vaccine rollout started to come out and we could, all get involved again with less social distancing and going to the theater and going to see concerts and all of that stuff. Billy special guested on a show with us and sang for the last hour of the show, and my band at the time actually backed him up. So, one of my first musical experiences with Billy Price was not that long ago. And it was that show. And since then, it's one of those serendipitous things where you connect with another musician on stage, another performer, and it just feels right and it works.
I had to say, because he was kind of poking his head out every now and again on the backstage there.
Yeah,
I was actually up front right there all the time. But I'm like Billy, or like kind of how it is with trying to get teachers' attention. Be like Billy, over here, Billy, over here, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
but that was good, and you guys definitely tore it up. And Funny enough, my dad actually said your guitar playing was a lot like Robin Trower. So would you say he was one of your big inspirations growing up?
I actually wouldn't say that, but that's interesting to me that you would that comparison in particular is interesting to me. I mean, I'm very aware of Robin Trower and Bridge of Sighs and the work that he's done, but he was never one that was constantly in my ear as I was growing up. I got into guitar from being a kid and sort of discovering rock and roll on my own. My parents were music fans, but my dad listened to jazz and like Louis Armstrong and Frank Sinatra, and my mom listened to pop music and country music that was on the radio and all of that. I don't remember the exact moment that it happened, but somehow I heard AC/DC. It probably had something to do with School of Rock, the Jack Black movie. And I remember just hearing that sound and I have flashbacks of seeing what those kids were doing on the big movie screen in the movie theater and going, oh my goodness, like this is a way that I could be cool. So more of where I came from was Angus Young and AC/DC and Jimmy Page and Led Zeppelin, stuff that was on the radio a lot, stuff that had already sounded familiar to me, more so than like Robin Trower or anybody like that.
I was listening to Day of the Eagle the other day from Robin Trower too, and I'm thinking like, that was actually a song that got me into it too, and I was thinking like, damn, that was a good song, that sort of thing.
Right on. Well, and since then I've, of course I've explored his music more, but not in any kind of way that, I think one of the beautiful things about music is that, as we grow as musicians and guitar players, Robin Trower came along in a unique time where his contemporaries were people like Jimmy Page and Angus Young and Eric Clapton. They were the innovators in this thing that is the electric guitar. And, now there's still innovation going on, but we have so much more of a pool and a well to dig from, outside of, what is popular on the radio. Because back then, I mean, you can watch Jimmy Page interviews and Eric Clapton interviews, and they're talking about what was on British radio at the time that they started playing music, and it wasn't anything that sounded like Led Zeppelin. They had to go back, and discover Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and all that stuff coming out of America about a decade earlier in order to develop their sound. And it's just that's one of the special things about music and the guitar is that there's this lineage and this timeline that has grown throughout the decades that is very palpable, but it also gives musicians an opportunity to be very unique, because you can sort of pick and choose where you pull your information from, and all of that is going to affect your sound. So that's interesting that I would get a Robin Trower comparison, because he's not somebody I look at as someone who's affected my sound, but we might have some of the same past influences. Robin Trower, I'm sure, was listening to Muddy Waters and Buddy Guy and all of that stuff in the same way that I was. So we might be twin souls in that way.
Somehow connected by fate or something like that, if they wanted to get poetic. I was going to say that was my dad's opinion. I was going to say something along the lines of like a Stevie Ray Vaughan in a sort of way too. So,
Well, and Stevie is, again, that's another person who I never sat down and copied his stuff lick for lick, but I did. I mean, one of his biggest influences, and it's apparent in the live album that they did together, is Albert King. And Albert King is definitely someone who I've studied very, very much and listened to. I was never as big into Stevie Ray Vaughan as many people think. I mean, of course, I can't deny that he's one of the greatest blues guitar players, greatest guitar players of all time. And he did so much for this music, but he wasn't somebody who turned me on as much as Albert King and Freddie King turned me on, in the same way that I'm sure those guys turned him on. And I that's really interesting to hear that comparison, because if I sound like Stevie Ray Vaughan, well, that's because we both studied Albert King a bunch. And we maybe, I mean, I try to have my own approach on the guitar and with blues, and be my own interpreter of this music that is so timeless and so classic. I'm really not trying to sound like anybody else but me. I'm trying to interpret that raw information that came from guys like B.B. King, Albert King, Elmore James, Otis Rush, Magic Sam, and process it through my own sort of filter in what I hear, and what comes through my heart to my hands, if that makes sense.
I'm gonna say, back to your roots, that sort of thing. As like some people would like to say, even though it might be more of like an historical sort of sense too. But I get what you mean too. But I think it's funny because I think in terms of like your guitar playing or like anybody else's sort of guitar playing, they may have never heard like the artist you had mentioned earlier with like Buddy Guy or anything like that, but yet somehow they incorporate it into their guitar playing, regardless of like what sort of genre it might be, for instance. And it just happens to be like, oh, you sound like Buddy Guy, for instance. I'd be like, wait, seriously? I don't even know who that is. And so it's sort of funny in a way, but I guess it just happens quite by accident. So whatever floats your boat.
Well, the roots of the electric guitar are in the blues, and that's undeniable. It's in the blues and it's in jazz, and so I think that anybody going to pick up this instrument is going to have to contend with that at some point. We all, I mean, there's a sort of a filter that you have to deal with in the beginning, like in terms of how the solo, for instance, when I was a beginner guitar player, I wanted to play guitar like Angus Young, and I wanted to play like Eric Clapton and Jimmy Page, and I wanted to play all of these fast guitar licks and rock and roll solos, and I wanted to have my hair flowing on stage and whatever.
I was a picture of doing headbang or waving the hair like this sort of thing.
Sure,
Going like that.
Exactly. But
yeah.
What of anybody who picks up a guitar for the first time, the physicality that the instrument requires, your expectations get shot down so quickly. And I remember many times just wanting to give up, and because I couldn't do it. But fortunately, because of the Uptown Music Collective, because I had great teachers who were able to explain to me that Angus Young and Jimmy Page and Eric Clapton were playing the blues, but playing it very fast, or just kind of hopped up on steroids and with a lot of energy, that why don't we start with blues? and B.B. King and Albert King, Muddy Waters, Hubert Sumlin, who was Howlin' Wolf's guitar player. And I remember the first blues lick, one of the first blues licks I ever learned was this little thing. I couldn't play anything on the guitar that sounded like music. I really, really couldn't. And I had a teacher who showed me this, which is it's really just 3 notes. It's 3 different things that you have to do with each hand. And when I discovered that I could just do it very naturally because it was simpler or easier than the things that I wanted to learn, that once I did it, I couldn't stop doing it because it sounded like music to me. And I was just blown away that I could do something on the guitar that sounded good, because I couldn't do anything that sounded good until I did that. And I remember going home and just for hours playing. And once I understood that that was the blues, and I mean, the bug bit me from there. I'm like, I'm going to stick with this blues thing. And then I started to really hear, at some point, I started to really hear the music and understand its emotional depth and fall in love with it beyond just the technical guitar sort of side of things.
I want to say you got some competition with Jimmy Adler because he actually did a good number of guitar licks when I had him on a while back.
Yeah?
Yeah. So unfortunately, I think you got some guitar licking to do if you want to try to compete with him.
Well, I'm not necessarily interested in competing with Jimmy. He's one of my favorite people. So
in a joking way. It was in a joking way, but
I understand.
Special shout out to Jimmy. And actually, I had Billy Price on here too. I had to admit that was actually surprisingly, for a guy who's out doing a lot of shows, he was actually pretty soft-spoken, and I thought he was going to give us a lot of pretty good answers to a lot of the questions I came up with. And we actually did that in like 45 minutes. So I think like, this guy's pretty soft-spoken. He's a cool dude, but man, I was a little surprised. I thought he was more the extroverted sort of.
You'll find that I think with a lot of performers. I very much still look at the guitar as my Superman cape. So
do the Clark Kent sort of thing. So.
Exactly. Yeah, like I can be a little shy. I'm not a good dancer at all. And this is just one example. I mean, I feel awkward anytime that I'm dancing with somebody or just trying to dance by myself. Most of the time I don't even try to dance, but once I put that guitar on, I can't stop my legs from moving. And it's one of those things where I think something happens to you when you get on stage that, my job is to not just play music, but to entertain. And, it's a thing of making things fun and energetic for the audience. And once I put the guitar on, I can't help but have energy. And there's just something else that comes out of me that I really have never been able to put my finger on or explain very well with words. But it's definitely not the Gabe Stillman who's, at the grocery store and at the bank and all of those other social situations. I kind of am more geared towards keeping a low profile when I'm in public, and I don't like big crowds, and I don't like, lots of stuff going on and lots of energy, and I'm a pretty low-key sort of person, which is a little bit hypocritical because, of course, when I'm on stage, I want big crowds and lots of energy, and I don't want things to be low key. Um, it's one of those things that I think performers have where, we have a separation between, how we view ourselves and how we have to view ourselves as regular people, and relate, and then, go out there and be superheroes. Because I know that that's what I look for when I go to see a show. When I go to see my idols like Bruce Springsteen or Buddy Guy or
Represent.
Exactly. These guys they're my Superman and Batman and Spider-Man, all of that. I don't know. There's a weird thing that happens in the brain where, you almost can. I mean, we deify and we lionize musicians, and I think it causes lots of other performers to sort of go into that mode themselves, or at least for me, that's what it's like. I mean, when I put my guitar on, I feel like I'm putting on my superhero costume.
And then it's more like the adrenaline rush, really, kind of like how a sporting event was too.
I am an adrenaline junkie, that's for sure.
Actually, I did have to ask, since you're from Williamsport, I guess, did you used to play Little League Baseball, since that seems to be where they host the Little League World Series and everything?
The farthest I ever got in baseball was T-ball, and that ended when I got hit in the head. I was playing outfield, and a kid knocked the ball off the tee, and I went to catch it, and the ball landed on my forehead, and I had a nice big old goose head that the other kids on the team and in school made fun of for a couple weeks afterward.
Oh God!
So that was the end of my baseball career.
Yeah, fun while it lasted, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I would say it's normally on TV too, and I just didn't know if they also have you guys play on that field too whenever you reach like the Little League Championship or something like that too in your local township as well. So, but at least has, since I've actually never been to Williamsport. I've always driven past it actually.
Oh really? Yeah, I've played at the Little League grounds before. I'm actually, fingers crossed, gonna have an opportunity to play the national anthem at one of the games this year on guitar. Remains to be seen. That's all stuff that is way above my pay grade.
It's gonna be the Jimi Hendrix national anthem sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's pretty cool. Like, do you know it was something this year, or is at least something you said it's still in the works, right?
Yeah, so Little League is going to be coming up at the end of August. I probably won't know until a week before or so. And I've got gigs all over the country too. So, I mean, it could be one of those situations where I've got to get on a plane and fly back and do it and then fly back out and all of that kind of stuff.
That's why they call me the working man.
That's right.
Nice little tip off the Rush right there. Rest in peace to Neil Peart. So, but I guess, how did you actually start with the guitar? Was any of your parents real big musicians, or were they just really big music listeners?
They were music listeners. And then I had an uncle who was a musician, a saxophone player and clarinet player, and retired as a high school band director. Me myself, I started playing saxophone in third grade because it's what my older brother did. And I don't know if anybody out there has an older brother, but you know what I'm talking about. I got to do the same thing that my older brother does, but I got to do it better. I kind of have always had a bit of a competitive edge to what I do.
the whole brotherly love sort of thing, if that's what we want to
Yeah,
call it.
yeah. And then the guitar just kind of came about as a thing of it's that indescribable thing. You hear the sound for the first time and you see somebody do it. It's like I want to do that. It's like the first time I ever heard somebody rev up a Harley. Like, I want one of those. Whatever that thing is, let me at it. And blues was always a very big part of that. I just didn't realize it at the time that what I was hearing was blues. But guitar came about as just something that I wanted. You can hear other musicians talk about seeing the Beatles on Ed Sullivan for the first time and how it just changed their life. And, that happened to me in so many circumstances. Because, growing up, I live in an age where, the whole family gathered around the TV to watch Ed Sullivan, but there's all this rock and roll on the radio, and what is that? And then I start seeing music videos and all that stuff, and just wanted to do it.
I always got to laugh with, because a lot of people who came on and I've interviewed, they were mostly like drummers. So normally when it's like how they start off, it's like they found everything they could find within their reach, whether it be a pots of pan, a pillow, or whatever.
Right.
They just start hitting it too. So that's normally how it always starts. So our joke is we get to hit things legally, because that's what we want to say.
Right.
Guitarists have to like learn mainly chords and notes and that sort of thing.
We have to convince our parents that, hey, will you buy me this this thing that's really loud, and I don't know if I'm ever going to be any good at it or not. Of course we don't have that attitude when we're 9-10 years old. We're just like, Mom, I want to play guitar. And fortunately I'm one of the lucky ones that my mom just said okay and got me an electric guitar, and it was all over from there.
That's good to hear. I guess did you jump around in any bands before you formed your own group, like cover bands or anything like that?
No, not really. I mean, I had a lot of really good training at the Uptown Music Collective. And then, went to school at Berklee for music. Played in a bunch of different ensembles up there. When I moved back to the area, I got a call to join a house band for a blues jam on Tuesday nights here in town. Started doing that gig, and quickly became sort of interested in just starting my own thing.
I did read that on your About page, yeah.
I really haven't done much besides what I do, and I'm lucky in that way as well.
Well, you also mentioned that you were a drum teacher. Is this something you just picked up recently?
What's that?
Oh, not drum teacher. I said you're a teacher. Did you recently become a teacher for guitar?
Oh, no. I actually taught at the Uptown Music Collective for about 5 years before I got so busy on the road that job didn't make sense anymore. And then the pandemic hit, and I lost all my gigs. And then, I had already left that job, but that job was also irrelevant because of the pandemic. Teaching is something that I do sort of off and on right now. I offer my time to people who approach me and ask me about it, but it's not something that I actively pursue or really advertise. So be careful with this part of the the interview, Brian.
Well, I would say actually I said drum teacher, and that's the thing. I'm so used to interviewing drummers, so that's why I actually said drum teacher at first. So my apologies there.
Well, no, I actually have given, lessons to people who are musicians in other on other instruments other than guitar, because I think that as musicians, there's always something that we can learn from each other.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Where there's always something that we can relate to each other on, depending on what level. I mean, I wouldn't trust me to teach a beginning drum student, but if someone's been playing for a little while and has questions about how to play a proper shuffle, I know enough about that instrument and know enough about the style and the genre, the techniques that are involved, and I know what I like to see out of somebody that I think I could be, used to them.
I see. And I guess since you did touch on COVID, I guess did you have any brushes with COVID? I guess how bad did it affect you personally, for you and your family?
My shows were, of course, like everybody else's shows, they were all canceled. I was delivering food for a little while there. A positive thing that came out of it for me was that it gave me time to write some songs. And, quickly after the vaccine rollout, I went down to Austin, Texas, and recorded my first record with the songs that I had written over the course of the pandemic, and got a very positive response. And it's sort of been nonstop since then for me in terms of gigging, touring, working on new material. I actually just finished recording my next record a couple months ago. The pandemic was a time to give me a pause professionally. I remember working all the time and having lots of gigs coming up, and all of a sudden there's no gigs coming up, and it's not like I'm gonna stop playing guitar, right? So I'm sitting around my house playing guitar, and just I got a bunch of songs out of it, which was great.
I guess how'd you utilize social media? Did you try anything with like YouTube or Facebook or anything like that?
I did a couple of different things. I did a video series for a little while called Blues in My Heart, which was just me kind of talking about my influences and some of the songs and performers that really impacted me. But I didn't do much with live streaming and video and all of that. I really kind of took the pandemic year and a half in quarantine as sort of a quiet time to reflect and write.
I think in a joking way we could say you were hibernating for a year and a half.
Yeah, that's right.
In a certain way when you think about it, because it was 2021 when I was reading your About page. That's when you, I guess, brought out your first album and formed the Gabe Stillman Band.
Yes, sir.
And I guess, what was the whole thing in Memphis you did? Was that some sort of tournament they always do with blues artists?
Yeah, that was in 2019. That was right before the pandemic. That's the thing that really kind of launched this career path that I'm on right now. It's called the International Blues Challenge. It's sort of like a battle of the blues bands from all over the world. And out of like 100 bands, we were in the top 8 that made it to the final round at the Orpheum Theater. And out of the 8 electric bands that competed, they gave me the award for the best electric guitar player at the International Blues Challenge, which still blows my mind. Whatever imposter syndrome it is that I have, it still kind of, throws me for a loop that, because I remember standing there on the side stage watching the other guitar players on stage going, there's no way that I'm going to win this thing. And I won. So
I'll say you jumped like crazy when you heard his name being like, or was it kind of like the shock thing at first to be like, wait, Wait, seriously? Me?
Yeah, no, it's seriously, it is one of those like memories that plays in slow motion for me whenever I think about it. And ladies and gentlemen, the winner is Gabe Stillman. I'm standing over there like, wait, did they just call my name? Is this really happening right now? Kind of a thing.
Like I said, I was jumping for joy, that sort of thing too.
Yeah.
That's pretty sweet. No, and congratulations there, mate.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
No worries. And I guess talking about your guitar, I guess what guitar were you playing when you came to hardwood there? I'm assuming you have a whole bunch, to be honest, so I'm not too sure.
Well, I do have a whole bunch, but I do have one that is my baby. This is another way that the pandemic affected me. So for the majority of my life, I've been a Gibson guitar player. I played Gibson SGs and Les Pauls, 335s. And then the pandemic hit, and I'm sitting around my house playing my Gibson guitars, and I'm getting bored. And I found a company based out of Olympia, Washington, called Nash Guitars that specializes in making relict Fender style guitars, which I had never really been a fan of. I mean, I've played Fender Strats and I've played Fender Telecasters, and it just never felt like home in the way that Gibson's felt like home. But they make a guitar, which is the one that I'm playing now, that is sort of a cross between a 50s Gibson Les Paul and a 50s Fender Telecaster. It's a mahogany body and neck with a maple top and two P90 pickups. And it sort of sounds like a Gibson, and it sort of sounds like a Fender. It definitely feels like a Fender, but it doesn't really do any one particular thing. It really kind of just does its own thing. And I bought that guitar over the course of the pandemic. And since then, that's been my main axe that I've been playing for the last 4 years that I've been on the road.
I had to laugh earlier when you said one of the guitars is like your baby. I was thinking, if it's blue colored, you kind of do like a funny reference to Baby Blue. I forget who was singing the song, but I know they played at the end of the Breaking Bad series. Do you really think of the TV?
Yeah, I do love me some TV. Yes,
You're a big
I
fan
do.
of Breaking Bad?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. How could you not be?
You know what? I have to actually watch all of Better Call Saul and then see how that whole thing ends right there, because it was also a prequel, but it was also a sequel.
Exactly.
So it'd be interesting. Yep. So those spoilers just yet. So
my favorite show on TV is well, it's really not on TV. It's on Apple TV, but it's Ted Lasso. The show with Jason Sudeikis about the soccer team over in Britain. And there's just so much in that show that talks about leadership and being a good leader, and there's a lot of inspiring messages in that show that are very encouraging if you're a young entrepreneur out there in any field. It can kind of get your mind right in terms of how to look at life, look at all the negative things about life, like rejection or self-doubt, self-consciousness, all that stuff, and help kind of put a perspective or a different lens on those things.
Was that still mainly a comedy show? Like, it had a good amount of comedy, but it also had like those deep messages in it.
There's a lot of comedy. There's a lot of drama too. There's a lot of soccer. There's a lot of, and I'm not really a big soccer fan either, which is another. I mean, I find it interesting, but yeah.
Football. That's what they call it,
yeah.
Or if South America, that's how they would probably put more emphasis on it with the football. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. I don't really know what kind of show I would say is my favorite, though. I know me, my sister, and my mom, we were real big into Game of Thrones. I think at the end of like season 6,
Oh
they
yeah.
were chanting the King of the North, King of the North. I mean, we were jumping. I mean, we were chanting, man. I mean, it
Oh
was
yeah. No, I'm a big Game of Thrones fan as well. In fact, so where I live in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, we're north central PA. I actually have played more shows in the last few years in upstate New York than I have back home. And over the years, I've cultivated a really strong fan base up there. And that's something that, we used to say in the van on the way to gigs, that we rule the North, or, we're the kings of the North. Just I don't know. It's always kind of cool to find those tie-ins from TV into real life.
yeah. You always find something, that's for sure. But I guess for your gigs and I guess even your studio sessions, what sort of gear do you use?
Really, I don't use a whole lot, man. I am sort of the mind that keeping it simple is better. The KISS theory, keep it simple and stupid. I I roll with an amp, whatever amp I feel like using that day, and I've got a tremolo pedal and a tuner and my Nash guitar, and I generally make that work until I break a string, because I like old strings. I don't like brand new strings. So I tend to keep them on the guitar until they break. And that's why I bring a backup guitar to use if I break one. I really don't use a whole lot of fancy gadgets or anything like that. I'm a big fan of the Fender Blues Junior. That's a tried and true workhorse. I have an amp built by a company here in Williamsport called Harding. I use that amp quite a bit. I have a Tone King out of Baltimore, Maryland. I have an old vintage for bigger shows. I use a vintage Fender Super Reverb that's been modded in a bunch of ways that I don't really understand, but it sounds great. So I'm not much of a gear guy or a tech guy. I really believe that, if guys like B.B. King or Chuck Berry or Albert King, Hubert Sumlin could plug directly into whatever amp was available to them at the time, even if they bought it from Sears for $10 or however much it was that guitar amps cost back then. If it was good enough for them, it's good enough for me.
I was gonna say that line, but I was also thinking like, if it sounds good, we're taking it. Otherwise, keep playing it until you break it.
Exactly. If it sounds good, it is good.
Absolutely too. But considering how you said like blues music has its roots in like all sorts of genres, I guess, what made you stick around with blues music? Why didn't you like go off into like rock or anything else?
Well, I there's a lot of what I do that is more rock oriented. I certainly use blues as a foundation for everything that I do, because it's where my heart is. It's my sort of emotional tether to my instrument. But in terms of how I write songs, I really just try to focus on writing a good song, and I don't really, and maybe this is a bad thing, maybe not, but I really could care less about what genre it might belong in. I think that, music is something, at the core of blues is folk music. And by that, I mean, it's music that people can relate to. There's, there's not a whole lot of stretching that you have to do of your imagination to understand what's going on harmonically or melodically or lyrically or anything like that. And that's the place that I try to write my songs from. And, you know, it really doesn't matter to me so much if a song is quote unquote a blues song or a country song or, you know, an old timey jazz kind of song or a folk song. I want to write music that will move people. And that's what I am trying to do, you know, and I think that that capability is there in blues, it's there in bluegrass, it's there in any kind of music. I just want to make people feel something and have that connection. Because it's not just about me on stage. It's about the crowd as well. And it's about that transfer of energy back and forth. I mean, I'm a big fan of, you know, when I play shows, I try to make eye contact with the audience. I'll walk the crowd and get in people's faces. And, you know, it's sort of almost more of like a punk rock mentality. Like we're all in this together. There's no separation of band and crowd. You know, so, you know, when you, to get back to your question and to not get off on too much of a tangent, when it comes to, you know, whether or not I stick with blues, I mean, I stick with blues in the sense that it will always be a part of me, but it doesn't necessarily define me or what I do, if that makes sense.
It was. I'm sorry about you to keep going there. But
No.
I would say blues is definitely more improvisation, if that makes sense, because I think they may do like the chorus and the verses, probably note for note and that sort of thing. But then they start getting more interactive with the audience, where it's like long solos or kind of like what Tommy Castro did when he actually did the same thing at Heartwood. He walked through the crowd and everything, and he kind of interacted that way.
Sure, yeah, and you're exactly right. I mean, that's another reason why I love blues. If you asked me to play the same thing on the guitar tonight that I played last night, I wouldn't know what you're talking about because I don't think that way. My brain just doesn't work like that. And, you know, that's where the improvisation in it comes in. And there's a whole lot of the foundation in blues and jazz improvisationally that you can just sort of mix into other genres and other kinds of music, you know, whereas I know that, you know, there are many bands out there, you know, pop rock bands or rock bands that, you know, people, when they go to the show, they want to hear the guitar solo that's on the record. You're not going to get that at my show. Because I really, I'm not interested in playing the same thing note for note every time, because I think that it would sort of, that wall between myself and the audience would be there if I was sort of on autopilot playing something that was very rehearsed. I try to do different stuff all the time, you know, to keep the audience engaged. You know, I'm trying to feel the crowd and whatever state of mind I'm in, that all goes into the music. And that's what makes it authentic for me.
I had to laugh earlier because I was figuring out a quote from Ed, Ed, and Eddie. I don't know if you watch like the old time cartoons.
Yeah, man, I grew up on Ed, Ed, and Eddie. Absolutely.
I always love that quote. I always love that quote. It's like, wait, my brain is working. That sort of thing.
Yeah. Double D, man.
No, that was Ed. That was actually Ed.
Oh, Ed. Oh, yeah. Wait, what was his butter toast?
It was butter toast and hold on.
There was another one.
That's what was funny. My fantasy come true. I am butter toast. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
Oh god, that, you know what? I actually checked out little parts and pieces of An Ed is Born, because that's actually my favorite episode. When they got the little film camera and he's trying to impress his brother, showing that he's all grown up, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Still one of the best episodes ever.
Oh yeah.
But it's also where it devours the camera.
Yeah. Oh yeah, dude. One of my favorite ones is the one where they come up with the scheme to they're either selling newspapers or they're printing fake newspapers, but it rains and they all get covered in like newspaper ink or something like that.
Let's see. I think it was one of the older ones, right?
I think yeah. Yeah, yeah.
I don't think it was fake newspapers. I think that one came a little bit later, but this one was Double D was a newspaper, and he was on, I think, making like a nickel or something.
Yeah,
And
right.
Eddie ordered too many newspapers, so they had to distribute them all out.
Yeah, right.
So I know what you're talking about. Summer rains, you can never predict them. That sort of thing.
Yep. The
Oh, cool.
characters. Man, you're bringing back so many memories for me right now. I'm trying.
I know it's all coming too much.
Yeah.
That's why I say earlier. Wait, my brain is working.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. That's pretty cool. I guess I forgot to ask, what brand was your guitar picks? Do you jump around with a variety, or just stick with one?
I grab whatever's available. I don't have a rhyme or reason to whether or not I'm using a pick or if I'm using my fingers. If I had it with me right now, I have a Ziploc bag that's full of guitar picks of all different shapes and thickness, and I kind of just reach into the bag and I make whatever I grab work at the time.
We'll make it work. That sort of thing. Whatever we pull, be like,
That's it.
That's it. All right.
I used a quarter for about half a show.
Use a quarter.
Yeah.
I want to say that sounds like it would break some pretty bad static, to be honest, or like.
Not really. If you're careful, I don't know. I mean, there's just different things with touch and sensitivity with the guitar. I kind of like it because it helps me focus on what I'm doing. Helps me not go into sort of like an autopilot mode if I'm, constantly, in the way that I don't use complicated gear. I try to challenge myself in other ways with whatever it is I'm doing, like tactile wise with the guitar. Many times I'll be on a show and a string will go slightly out of tune, but the energy of the show is so good that I won't want to stop to tune my guitar in between songs. So I'll just, it's just a different thing that I've got to do with my hands and bend this string in a certain way when I make a chord or go to hit that note or whatever kind of pick I'm using. I've got to have this sort of touch sensitivity to it. It's a way that I sort of, I guess, not consciously, but, inadvertently keep myself engaged with what's happening in the moment.
Well, like I said, you got to just do improvise or whatever works at that point. Because
right.
Were you at a picks by then? Is that why you had to use a quarter?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
My bag was out of reach. I had a quarter in my pocket. I could feel it. Or I actually had a bunch of change in my pocket and I could feel it. And I just reached into my pocket. I pulled out a coin and, we had just finished a song. I had dropped my pick. I knew I needed something to hit the strings with. And, all right, boys, we got to start the next one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here we go.
Oh, that's so badass. All right. That's pretty cool. But I guess let's see where we're at right here. I guess this one kind of deals with you personally, but I guess what sort of challenges do you face on like a daily basis and like how do you overcome them?
I have to, so going back to what we were just talking about, I struggle with keeping my focus a lot on, whatever task it is that I'm working on. And I'm talking about like menial things, folding my laundry and all of that stuff. I get very easily distracted. And what I've been doing lately to help me out with that is I've just been, trying to stay engaged with that musical part of my brain. It's an exercise that I do with myself every day. If I'm doing something that's not musically related, I try to stay engaged with something that is musically related. And oftentimes it keeps me on task with the things that isn't related to music. Like today, I just got a big batch of new T-shirts new merch to sell at shows, and I'm folding T-shirts, and my mind has a tendency to wander. So the entire time that I'm there, I'll start singing a Jackson Browne song to myself, or a Motown song, or something, and and then I'll start singing some other melody, or just humming along, whistling, whatever, and then the next thing I know, boom, all my T-shirts are folded and it's all done. But that's something that I do have to actively remind myself, hey man, stay engaged with music all the time, and the day goes much easier.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say, especially when you're overloading your mind with so much to do at once, in terms of just simple chores, or in the case I work at multiple jobs too. I don't know if you had to do multiple jobs when the pandemic was around, because I know you say you were delivering food.
Yeah, I was delivering food. I was doing lessons off and on over Skype. It's, life's not easy for anybody. We're all out there trying to manage our personal lives and our work lives, and, still try to find time to do the things that we like to do. Every day there's going to be something that happens to you that is out of your control. How do you deal with it? Are you gonna cry about it? Or are you gonna, work through it and move on? And the more that I stay on task for me, and the more I stay connected with music, the easier those things are. Those interruptions, the personal interruptions, the other distractions that happen. I have a big family, and I actually just sold my house because I've been on the road a lot, and there's no sense in me owning a house right now. So I moved back into my mom's house. This is real inside baseball, guys, to anybody listening to this podcast. If this gets out there, I don't know what it could do to my career. But yes, I'm living in my mom's basement at the moment.
I mean, there's no shame at it either. This is my parents' house too. So, you gotta make ends meet.
No. Exactly. There isn't. I'm in a transitional period sort of in life right now, and I have a big family, and there's a lot going on in this house all the time with, there's 3 dogs, there's 2 cats. My 2 younger brothers live here. My stepdad and my mom live here, and, everybody's, my family, they're kind of hoarders. Everybody's stuff is piled up. There's a lot that will pull my mind away from what is important to me. And I really work hard to keep that stuff, sort of over there at the moment.
We don't cross that border right there. We make our own little Texas Rio Grande border, we like to call it that way.
Right.
So
right.
Actually, I was going to say, I'm comparing you to the Brady Bunch or the Hey Arnold sort of boarding house.
Exactly. Yeah, this is a Hey Arnold situation for sure.
I want to say, which one's the dwarf who likes to knock over buildings and everything?
That would be me. That would be me being clumsy and not ever looking at where I'm going and always being in the way. But again, it's really funny that you brought that up. As long as I stay engaged with music, I find myself, less and less. I have just more poise and more awareness of, what's going on around me. So
I would say it helps keeps our sanity in check too. Otherwise, it'd be they write the book called "The Fall of the House of Stillman,"
yeah,
like Edgar Allan Poe style.
Yeah.
So, all right, that's pretty cool. And I guess this one might tie into like some of the lessons you do with your students. But I guess what advice do you give to struggling musicians and students who I guess approach you for any sort?
Don't look at it like you're struggling. Because that is something that I think society tells us as artists or people who want to play music. I mean, there's this like archetype, this sort of stereotypical starving artist sort of thing. You're not struggling. You're pursuing your talent and you're pursuing your dream right now. If that's what you want to do with your life and you want to play music and you recognize that you have passion for it and talent for it, get after it. And if there's a hurdle that you're up against that you can't seem to break through, well, remember that everything takes time. I mean, time is the biggest factor. I have taught guitar lessons to 8-year-olds, and I've taught lessons to 80-year-olds. And, at the end of the day, I know that I could teach anybody to do something on the guitar. The ultimate, the X factor is, what do they do? What time do they spend working on it and practicing and all of that stuff? The commitment isn't, something that is psychological really as much as it is just physical, with put your hands on the instrument, sit there and watch TV and play something over and over and over and over and over again. And if you're honest with yourself and you're able to recognize whether or not it sounds good or bad, right, then you will get it. There's no question about it. You will get it. And it's just that kind of persistence that's required and that time commitment, and it's, again, it's not even something that you necessarily have to be conscious for. I can demonstrate to you finger picking, which is something that I never really worked on until I got to college. There's a blues technique. I'll try to get my right hand in the shot here. There's a blues technique where we alternate between strings like this. Where the thumb kind of becomes like a drum or like a bass line to something like. It took me a lot of work to get this together before I added any of that other stuff. But I had a teacher who told me, just sit there and watch TV and, and keep your strings muted and just with your thumb go and start slow, and eventually you'll be able to do it, That was actually very sloppy, but
I would say, I think I heard a little bit here and there, but actually that was pretty damn good nonetheless. I would say it was a little bluegrass infused right there. So
Yeah, bluegrass, Piedmont blues style. Yeah.
no, that was pretty damn good though. Actually, I think Jimmy's, I think all his solos they did were only like maybe a few seconds, but I think it was just kind of showcasing like some of the people who had influenced him, as well as like maybe some people he had learned from, but I think that one was pretty extensive too. So I was always going to shout.
That's a little bit more of a guitar lesson than it is like a demonstration, I guess. But you can apply that to, I mean, anything. I think. I mean, guitar is just a very practical example of that. Sit in front of the TV and hit some guitar strings with your thumb until you can do it without thinking about it, and it becomes muscle memory. Now, you don't, for me, like we talked about earlier, I don't want it to be too much muscle memory, because I don't want it to be totally automatic. That's why I use different picks. That's why I, will play a guitar that's out of tune and try to make it sound like it's in tune. Because I have to challenge myself in that way. But for somebody trying to learn or grow, the root of it is just time on the instrument.
Absolutely. Well, practice comes experience, as they would like to say too.
Yeah.
Actually, I was always tempted to shout, "Play Freebird," that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So,
yes. Right.
I don't know if you ever got one of those at one of your concerts or anything.
Absolutely. You know what? And I'll say something about that. Freebird is a masterpiece of a song, in my eyes. And you can watch videos of Leonard Skinner back in the 70s playing that song to stadiums full of people, and they play it. I mean, they're sincere and thoughtful, and it's a great song. It's very well crafted. It's played beautifully. The arrangement's great. I sort of resent that people have turned that song into a joke, and I understand why it's become a joke, and I don't take it too seriously, but it is something that I think I wish that more people out there took that song or treated that song with the respect that it deserves.
Because it's I'm bashing it or anything like that. I'm just, first off, it's always kind of meant to be like a joke between me and friends too. So.
Oh no! I wasn't saying that about you. I was saying that about the drunk guy at 1 o'clock in the morning, who's right before the encore shouting Freebird.
Yeah, I can understand why, but to each his own. I mean, if you're able to play it, knock yourself out, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, actually, here's what I was going to do, because we've been talking for a good hour and 15 minutes. So, got this last question. Well, I should say one of the major questions here. Then we'll get to some fun ones, and then we'll close out with one more after that. Okay.
Sure.
All right. So, the first one here is, what do you love most about the guitar and music in general?
That I can express myself through it in a way that I can't necessarily always do verbally. That for some reason, if I'm ever feeling like I'm having a hard time, that music is just it's just always been there. It's always been the thing that I've related to. I mean, almost like an actual person, like a friend. I can I can express myself in many ways through the guitar, more so than I can through words a lot of times.
All right. I wasn't too sure. Normally people like to give a little elaborate answers, but no, that's pretty good. And I'd say
More,
we've
I
really.
don't. What's more elaborate?
Well, I think it's always like an expression sort of thing, rather than be like, it really brings me out, so to speak, or your spirit flies free, so to
Well,
speak.
yeah. I mean, it does. It brings out the part of me that is the most authentic, I think. Whereas, I mean, I think we can all relate to, feeling awkward in social situations and all of that. And like I said earlier, the guitar is my Superman cape. Nothing can touch me when I've got it on. So
I would say or it's just the real me. That's what I think you want to probably say to people. So
yeah, it's
no.
the real.
That's good. That's a good answer though. So, all right. So let's get into some fun questions right here. Ready?
Sure.
So let's start off with a simple one here. What is your favorite food?
I'm a big fan of sushi, man. Not gonna lie, I could breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. I could sushi it up.
We'll say, was it like an acquired taste at first, or did you like immediately?
Nope. It was an immediate love. It was immediate. I tasted it. I put a little wasabi on it and dipped it in some soy sauce. Not much, just a tiny little bit, because I don't want to disrespect. I don't want to disrespect the sushi. If it's been made well by someone who has trained and studied, making sushi for a long time, it is, I don't know. I remember having it for the first time and going, yep, raw fish. Give it all to me. Come on.
It's almost like you wonder if you were reincarnated from like someone from Asia originally. So
hey, maybe I was.
Hey, who knows? All right. What is your favorite movie?
Favorite movie? Blues Brothers.
Oh yeah, the
Blues Brothers, man. That's I remember seeing that as a kid. And I think, shortly after I saw the movie for the first time, the collective put on a teacher show that was a tribute to the Blues Brothers. And it was all of the teachers who were currently at the Uptown Music Collective. And a guy who I've worked with for a long time, Colin, played Elwood because he's like 7 foot tall. And, he had to be Elwood. And then actually Jared, the gentleman you've been interfacing with to set up this interview, he was Jake. And I just remember looking at them and having the best time. And I had seen the movie shortly before. And I don't know, it was just a very important connection to me.
I'd definitely say the whole police chase and then the whole thing with them getting arrested near the end with.
Absolutely. There's action, there's comedy, there's great music. I mean, Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles, James Brown.
There's Carrie Fisher, which we should give a nod to the actress too, who tragically passed away.
Cab Calloway. I mean, the blues and the band. I mean, Steve Cropper. So I didn't know as a kid who any of these people are. But that was another one of those fun things about learning about the blues and about music and about Stax Records and, who Aretha Franklin is and who is Cab Calloway, who the heck is Steve Cropper, who's Donald Duck Dunn, who are these guys? And, I don't know. I connected with that movie immediately because I loved the music and it was goofy. It was like goofy, silly kind of comedy, but also, there was this other history part of it too that fascinated me, and just kind of learning about who each of these individuals were that, helped me along my journey in becoming a musician.
Yeah, movies tend to do that, especially when it is like the real good ones. They'll definitely inspire you in some sort of way. Be like, oh, that musical score sounded pretty cool too. And
yeah.
It's like, boom,
Yeah.
there you go.
And so, like, if I had to pick a favorite movie, that's my favorite movie. But I'll throw, of course, Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, and I'm a nerd and a geek and a dork and all of those things to my core. And I had cool parents who would pull me out of school to go see the movies and all that stuff. Just fun.
As soon as you said dork, I immediately thought of Kevin from Ed and Eddie, who would always yell, dorks! That sort of thing.
Dork. Yeah, man.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So what's your favorite alcoholic and non-alcoholic drink?
Well, I enjoy a good IPA from time to time. Doesn't have to be from a particular brewery or a particular place. And then non-alcoholic, I love me my ginger ale. Nectar of the gods, this stuff.
The Schweppes? I thought it would be like the Canada Dry.
Any ginger ale will do. Same with the IPAs. It's not. I'm not a brand ambassador for any particular brand.
I would say I never really understood IPAs, and the problem is because I think a couple times I tasted them, they were never the greatest, or it was because I was playing golf, and then it soured my mood afterwards. So that's why I probably stayed away from it.
No, you can't have anything to do if you're gonna sit down and have an IPA, especially a strong one that's like 8%, 9%, something like that.
Or really anything, because then I think it then really affects you afterwards. But
yeah,
like we said, to each their own too. So
right.
You did mention about your favorite TV show, because that was a little bit earlier in the interview here, so we'll skip that one. But we'll jump right to the last one, the fun questions. So, what is currently your favorite song?
Currently, my favorite song is... That's funny because it changed, because I thought about this question earlier, and it changed from this morning to this afternoon. And this afternoon, it became Bridge Over Troubled Water by Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel. And also the many fantastic other recordings of that song that there have been. Aretha Franklin, in particular, has one of the most iconic and wonderfully soulful versions of that song that there is. But also the Simon and Garfunkel original recording is very powerful, and it's a very special song to me.
I always gotta laugh when it's Simon and Garfunkel too, because when you think about the history, like it's like these guys make killer music, so why is it that they really hated each other and still somehow stuck around? So it's almost like, what gives?
Well, they didn't. They broke up and came back together, and broke up and came back together, and I mean, bands break up, happens.
Not like this though. I mean, it's almost like as soon as you break up, that's pretty much meant to be the end of it. I know there's been some stories where like maybe the vocalists came back after a while, in the case of like how David Lee Roth did it with Van Halen. So,
Sure.
I don't know. Sometimes people are weird. I will just say that. So
people are really weird, man. That's for sure.
We'll put that on a shirt. People are weird. There we go. So
yeah.
All right. So Gabe, we're nearing the end of my podcast right here. Before we jump into the last question, did you have any questions for me or any final words you want to say before we jump into it?
No, just thank you very much for chatting with me, man. It's been a pleasure. It's been fun.
I will say, go back to Tate. I know we talked about it earlier, but he was actually the one who gave me the contact info, and I reached out. That's how I met Jared, too. So a special shout-out to Jared Mondell.
Jared Mondell, my man. God of Thunder.
God of Thunder. Oh. Was he a big Kiss fan? Is that why he chose the name, or he just loved the name of it?
Oh, of course. Yeah. He's definitely a big Kiss fan, as am I. I have all, 4 or 5 box sets of the Kissology or whatever that is. I remember begging my mom to pre-order them for me, and that's one band that I will always regret not seeing live, and I really don't think that I'll get the opportunity to, with my schedule being as busy as it is. I don't know if I'll make it to a Kiss concert. I don't know if they're still playing concerts, but
they seem to always come back with another farewell tour, but they always it's clear that they don't want to retire because it's something they've been rolling with since the 70s.
Right.
But I don't mean to toot my horn, but I did see them live, and they did put on a great show.
Well, of course, they're Kiss.
Oh, yeah.
Man. Oh, yeah.
I was going to say, you're going to do like the whole blood thing, too, and like lead into 100,000 Years, where Simmons would always do the blood scene.
Or God of Thunder. Yeah.
It's either or, but I think it did more with 100,000 Years, to be honest.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Great tune.
But I do have to ask,
both great songs.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I guess how did you and Jared meet before we jump into it? Last question.
No, he was working at the Uptown Music Collective when I started as a student there. That's how I met him.
And then afterwards, just one thing led to another, and now, hey, we're best friends, and he's your social media guy.
I mean, yeah, we've had a long relationship, and it's just, I mean, there's so much that the Uptown Music Collective has given me in terms of a family of people. I didn't really feel like I belonged in school a whole lot, and I felt more like I belonged at the collective. And Jared was a very big part of making me feel like I belonged. So it's very nice that as a grown up, we still have a professional relationship.
That's good to hear. And special thanks to Jared for helping put this whole thing together.
Yes, sir.
All right. So final question. You might have already touched on it, but just to reiterate it again, in case it does come to it, what sort of message of hope could you give to musicians and people out there as we at least try to get back to some sort of normalcy with COVID?
Keep coming out. I mean, I don't know if I have a message of hope, because I think that people do have hope. I've certainly seen myself firsthand that, there's lots of people coming to my shows. The hope is in the action. It's the doing it. So let's all keep doing it together, and of course being safe as possible, and all of that stuff as we move past the pandemic. But it's been great in these last couple of years since the vaccine rollout, people have been so thirsty they were so thirsty. And I think now that, that thirst got so unquenchable for people over the quarantine times and the lockdown that, now more than ever, it seems like I know I can't get enough. And it seems to me like my fans and, the festivals that I play at, they're all being very well attended and everything. So let's all just keep doing it together, y'all, and celebrating this thing we call life, to quote the purple one, Mr. Prince.
Spoken like a true prodigy. So,
yeah.
And amen to that. All right. So, Gabe, we reached the end of my podcast right here, and boy, this was a damn good interview too. So,
hey, Brian, I appreciate it.
No worries. Did you have any final words or any shout-outs you want to give before we close?
Check out the website, GabeStillman.com. I hope to see you at a show soon. Keep an eye out for my next record that's going to be coming out either at the end of this year, beginning of next year. I hope you watch the rest of Brian's episodes on his channel, on his podcast. He's a wonderful guy. Keep listening. He talks to a lot of great musicians, and I'm just pleased to be to have the opportunity to chat with him, and keep on checking it out. I hope to see y'all soon.
Thank you so much, Gabe. All right, and I guess how else can people reach outside of your website? Do you use Facebook or any other social media?
Instagram, Gabe Stillman Music. Facebook, Gabe Stillman. Check it all out, man. Google me. Stalk me. Please.
I don't know about stalking. We don't want to go that far, too. So, all right. So, everyone, my guest today was Gabe Stillman. Go hit him up on the socials. If he's in your neck of the woods, make sure you go check him out. You will not be disappointed. I got living proof of that, too. I got to actually post those videos from the concert at Hardwood Acres. So, I'll see if I can put those up soon.
Thank you, my guy. Appreciate it.
No worries. Gabe, you stay safe.
Hey, you too,
Keep
Brian.
on rocking, and stay tuned, y'all.
All right.